Welcome to That Entrepreneur Life, a podcast about entrepreneurship that takes you from idea to launch and beyond. Each week, your hosts, Andrew Lees and Clint McPherson, discuss different business topics aimed at adding value to any entrepreneur's journey.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of That Entrepreneur Life. I'm Andrew Lees, and I got my co-host Clint McPherson today. How you doing, man?
I'm good, brother. Had an awesome weekend. Hope you did too. But we've got a very special guest on the show today. He's a two-time Inc. 5000 entrepreneur, a TEDx speaker, and a Syracuse University Business School faculty member. You're definitely going to want to stick around for this one, guys. But before I introduce our special guest today, I want to remind you to subscribe to our podcast and to our mailing list through our website so that you don't miss out on all the free resources we have to help you start and grow your business. Also, guys, the absolute best way to show your support is to share our show with your friends and family. If you know someone who wants to learn about starting or growing a business, we'd be honored if you share that entrepreneur life with them. With that said, I'd like to welcome our special guest, John Torrens, to the show. How you doing today, brother?
I'm fantastic, Clint. How are you doing?
Good, man.
All right.
So John, brother, we had a little bit of conversation. I know you're going back into the faculty space today at Syracuse, and you're jumping right back into that. But before we talk about some of that type of stuff, can you take us back to when your entrepreneurial journey started and what it is about entrepreneurship specifically that gets you fired up every day, brother?
Yeah. So like a lot of entrepreneurs, I started like most kids do, right? Mowing lawns, shoveling driveways, because I live up in the Northeast, buying packs of gum and selling off individual pieces to my classmates, right? Or, to my principal's dismay, buying packs of firecrackers and selling them off individually, right? Like a lot of us do. And you kind of get the taste of that and you realize, hey, I can be self-sufficient. I don't have to rely on anybody else. And I can do this on my own. And that's pretty much how it started. And, as I got older, I realized that is just a better setting for me because, I like controlling my own destiny. I like time freedom. I like location independence. And the truth is I just make a bad employee. And there's a bunch of reasons for that. But one of the main reasons is because of my ADHD that I've had almost all my life, but didn't realize until my formal diagnosis in my 40s. But I think that was one of the reasons why I just gravitated toward entrepreneurship and creating my own job or my own opportunities is because I didn't really function very well in the structure of a job that somebody else had created for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've heard you talk about how a lot of businesses aren't really utilizing people who have ADD or ADHD to, on some level of the spectrum. They're not really maximizing their potential. So, and that happens a lot, right? And that happens a lot for a lot of different people, with or without ADHD, where they're not necessarily getting maxed out where they are, and employers aren't necessarily trying to figure out, hey, how do we, this person, everybody's a little bit different. How do we maximize their full potential as an employee?
Yeah, that's a great point. And there's a couple of reasons for it. The first is because a lot of the employees may not even know that they have ADHD, right? They just have these behaviors that could look problematic in the workplace. But on the flip side, they can be super functional as well. The other problem is that even if you have a diagnosis, you may not be all that comfortable self-disclosing that to your supervisor, your HR manager, or whoever you report to. So there's definitely some potential issues there. But if you're able to tap into these people and harness what's really good about the way they're wired and their ADHD, the benefit to the organization could be profound.
Yeah, exactly. And you talk about ADHD being your superpower. And I think a lot of us as entrepreneurs have ADHD somewhere on the spectrum. I've never been diagnosed, but I honestly do feel it. I mean, sometimes I feel it more than others, where I just really can't focus. I've got so many ideas going on, and I really want to kind of tackle them all. But can you talk about that and how ADHD has become, you've figured out a way to make it your superpower?
Yeah. So the thing with ADHD is that it's not, it doesn't look the same in everybody. And as a matter of fact, there's at least two presentations of it. So one is the inattentive type. And this is the one where people are very forgetful. They just don't seem motivated. They might seem lazy. That one doesn't correlate especially well with entrepreneurial success. However, the impulsive and hyperactive presentation of ADHD correlates really well with ADHD or with entrepreneurial success. And there's a few reasons for that. So in the hyperactive and impulsive presentation, there's these traits that you have, right? So, and there's a flip side to each one of these. So you have a high propensity for risk. You're very proactive. You have this super sense of urgency. You have what's called low premeditation, or not having to overthink things. And you have this high sensation seeking, and you're also highly impulsive. So if you think about it, when these are functional and they're working well for you, if you have a high propensity for risk, you look brave and visionary, right? You look like the guy who took the risk when nobody else would. But on the flip side of that coin, if it's not working for you, it looks like you're just reckless and you jump in without thinking about it, right? The highly proactive trait, if it's functioning, it just makes you look like you're proactive, you're anticipating, you're thinking ahead. But if it's dysfunctional, it makes you look like you're jumping the gun, you're acting a little bit too soon, you're unfocused on the now, that sort of thing. So, and each one of those traits has that, right? One of my favorites is this idea of low premeditation. So low premeditation, if it's not working for you, or in the worst case, it looks like you're rushing things or making bad decisions. But for entrepreneurs who are able to harness that and make it work for them, they can act fast and think fast and jump on opportunities before anybody else even perceives them. So there's a plus and a minus of each one.
Yeah. Because you're really running through a bunch of different scenarios in your head quickly. You're kind of maybe seeing opportunities before, like you said, before other people are really recognizing them as opportunities. And maybe because there's so many thoughts going on, in a short period of time, you're sort of kind of figuring out how each one of them fits in with what you're doing at that time. Like, I think I have that with my business. The end of the night, usually I'll take a shower, and I'm in the shower and I'm thinking about what I need to do the next day. And sometimes I get so worked up, it's not easy for me to go to bed, because I'm like, all of a sudden, I go from just a few thoughts of like, all right, I'm going to do this, this, and this. And then I start thinking about how am I going to do this, this, and this. And then all of a sudden, all these ideas kind of flood in. And then sometimes I can kind of connect the dots of how I'm going to, the process of how I'm going to do something. And sometimes it's a little difficult to connect the dots. And then that's when you really start to, get a little sleepless. But it's interesting how that works.
Yeah. One tip that I could give your listeners for that. Okay, I started doing it myself about 1.5 years ago, and it's been huge. And it's simple, right? But it's simple, but not easy, because you have to make yourself do it. I'm in the habit now of, before I go to bed, like you said, I do the shower, and then I'll sit down at my desk and I'll say, okay, what do I have to do tomorrow? Right. And I'll do all the different buckets, right? I've got all the things I got to do for my classes at the university, the things I have to do for my business, anything I got to do personally. And I'll just write a big list. And then I print out my Outlook calendar. And this is my Outlook calendar for this morning. You can see it's already all, written on and everything. So now when I wake up, now I know what I'm doing, right? So I have a purpose, instead of getting up and saying, oh, let me check my stock ticker. Let me check my Twitter feed. Whatever, now when I get up, I know, okay, look, these are the things I said I'm going to do. And what I've learned is that if it's in my calendar, I get it done. If it's not in my calendar, if it's still in my head and never makes it to my calendar, it takes a little while for it to get done,
100%,
So that's definitely something that could be helpful for people.
Oh, for sure, man.
It's a great tip. Yep.
It is. That is a great tip. I think again, it gives you a start point, right? It gives you something to say, or a checklist that you can go ahead and the action items, you're prioritizing things. When you don't do that and you leave it all in your head, that's why everybody says it's good to write as much down. When you think about something or come up with an idea, write it down, because some form or fashion, you will remember it later. But when you could have actioned something then, or at least written it down, or where you can come back and say, okay, that needs to be a priority, right? And so I really think that that's huge. And so that action tip I know is going to definitely help our audience out for sure.
Yeah. And it helps me sleep better too, right? So if I write it down, then I'm not laying in bed thinking, all right, I got to remember this, or I'm not turning things over in my head like I used to. I got it written down. I know it's there. I'm not going to lose it. And I get better sleep. So I get I wear this Whoop band, and it, it helps me kind of track my sleep and everything. And, it's helpful knowing that you're not tossing and turning, thinking about all the stuff you got to do the next day because you wrote it down, and it's easy.
Well, the stress is still on you if you keep it in your head, because you're like, okay, I got this lit. I just wrote 20 things down in my head, and now I got to remember everything. And with all the other distractions that come on, like you said, the Twitter feed, your stock ticker, all this other stuff that is going to actually distract you. But now you wrote it down, put it in your calendar, and that's awesome.
And it's also helpful for another reason, and that's because we know one of the things that the research shows is that some sort of mindfulness practice super helpful for controlling the negative sides of your ADHD traits. So a lot of what people that I coach or work with, I recommend that they do this first thing in the morning. And if you've written everything down the night before, you know what you got to do. You don't get up all frantic. You can do your mindfulness practice in the morning, 6-minute, 10-minute meditation, because you're not worried about it, right? You can do that. You can focus on focusing, which is kind of odd, right? But usually when you meditate, you're focusing on your breathing, you're focusing on something internal versus external stimuli. And that's been shown to really help people with ADHD. So the other thing, one more tip for everybody is to put your phone in airplane mode when you go to bed. And don't turn it on until you decide to in the morning. So, I'm sure you guys do this. I've done it. A lot of people listening have probably done this. You grab your phone before you're even out of bed, or you grab your phone and look at it while you're in the bathroom, or you're just bombarding yourself with information and media before you even really have your eyes open, before you're caffeinated, before you've been moving. So it's a great thing. Just turn it in airplane mode, get up, brew yourself some coffee, make some tea, do whatever you do your 6 to 10 minute meditation. Then when you're ready, you turn on your phone and you say, okay, what's coming at me today? And where can I prioritize this in the list of stuff that I already said I was going to do?
Yeah, that's great. There's so much information hitting us from every different angle, and we put ourselves in front of it too. It's not like, we definitely have that choice to turn it off and to not look at it. I think that's a great idea. And sometimes we're using things like, social media or looking at our email or something to kind of, wake us up and get our mind going. But I think when we first wake up, that could be really more detrimental than not. Especially like if you get a bad email, you're not so excited about, or just causes immediate anxiety at, 6 o'clock in the morning. Like that's not a good thing.
Right. And if you're high on the impulsivity scale, when you get an email, what do you have to do? You have to deal with it. You have to respond to it. You got to act on it, right? You can't not do something about it, right? So just, eliminate that distraction. And this whole idea of eliminating or managing distractions is really important. So a lot of the student entrepreneurs I work with, or even my own clients that I coach, one of the first things we do is just do a basic media consumption audit, right? So what do you, for example, I've got 3 screens, right? But during this interview, I've got them all shut down except for this one, right? I don't have my WhatsApp web up. I don't have my stock ticker. I don't have Instagram. I don't have anything else besides this because I need to focus on it. So you'd be surprised, or maybe you wouldn't be surprised, but a lot of entrepreneurs they have 3 screens going. They got CNBC in the background. They may have some music playing. They got their phone, and it's no wonder that they're highly distracted, right? So thinking about the types of things you're taking in, and, is Outlook just, beeping on you all the time? Is your Gmail lighting up? Are you controlling your environment? Right. So you have these controls, so you may as well exert them and give yourself the opportunity to do what you need to do and succeed.
Exactly.
Man,
yeah.
That's awesome. So John, through your research, you found that companies led by entrepreneurs who have ADHD are more likely to experience faster growth.
Yeah.
Do you have an example of a decision that you made in your business that you may not have made without having ADHD and that led to an explosive growth for you?
Yeah. So for example, in the early days of running my company, we were just like a single location spot. Hold on, guys. My window's open and it's raining. I got to shut it. I'm so sorry.
Okay, bro.
Yeah.
Good.
No worries.
We'll edit this out.
There we go. Sorry about that.
No worries. Yeah, you
All
gotta keep it dry in there.
Yeah. So, I had an opportunity to open another location, but it was going to cost some money and didn't really know exactly, what was involved, but versus overthinking it, right? Which there's an argument to be made for thinking things like that through. I just said, yeah, let's do it. And we figured it out. Now, I've been in other positions where we've had the same type of situation come up. We had an opportunity in front of us, and for whatever reason, the team said, hey, maybe it's not the right time to do it. A lot of times I regret it because I think there's benefit to acting fast and doing that. But just that figuring out that one location, the extra location, before we were really ready for it, right? We, like most of us, we just build the airplane while we're flying it. And we did that. And that enabled us to put a process in place to do the next one and the next one and the next one. So even though we weren't technically ready, and if I was being logical about it, I probably would have said, hey, now is not the right time because of the pressure that it put on the organization and my teammates. But we did it anyway. And yeah, it was a little, the pressure was high. We messed up a lot. We made a lot of mistakes that were somewhat costly, but we figured it out, and then we were able to do it again and again and again. So that was kind of the beginning of what was a pretty explosive growth curve for us.
Okay. And it sounds like you started to make plan, like you started to kind of optimize the way that you rolled out new business or the way that you expanded your business after you had done it once or twice. Maybe you just kind of dove into it. Like you said, you were building the plane as you were taking off. But then you had this strategy and this plan that started to take shape. What do you think about kind of having a combination of putting a plan together from the beginning, like a good strategy, and then that allowing you to make these more impulsive decisions better and more efficiently, because like you have this framework and this, that you can do that with?
Yeah. I mean, that probably would have been the best case scenario. It's just, that wasn't where I was, right?
Yeah.
and one of the things that we know is that having a really strong number two in your organization to tamp down the negative side of your traits is super helpful. So entrepreneurs, the way we operate is, we hypothesize, we test, we get the results of that test, and we try it again. Whereas like a strong number two would be exactly what you described, Andrew. They'd say, okay, let's formulate the strategy, let's think it through, and now let's execute it. But that's not how a lot of us work. We say, okay, let's think about it, let's do it. Hey, how'd that work? It didn't work so well. Okay, let's do it different next time. Right.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I do recommend for a lot of entrepreneurs is to find that strong number two, even if it's just your maybe an assistant versus a chief operating officer, whoever it is. Find that person who can kind of govern your impulses and make sure you skew a little bit towards the more functional aspects of your traits versus the dysfunctional aspects.
That makes sense. So they can say, hey, it's a great idea. You don't want somebody who's just going to shoot you down all the time. Like don't do that. Let's think this through for the next several months. But it's more like somebody who can kind of say, hey, that's a great idea, but let's just real quick think that through, put a plan together, and then we can run with it. If it checks all the boxes still, and we still feel good about it after a relatively quick analysis, then boom, let's go. So I like that.
Yeah. And it's a big skill for that number two person to understand who they're dealing with and how to best manage up. So with the CEOs that I've worked with, who I've also worked with either their COO or their assistant, and getting them to understand how their boss operates, how they think, and all that, type of stuff, that helps a lot, because now the number two person really gets it. They're like, hey, if I know this is what I need to happen, there's certain ways, that I can act that will get us there, and certain ways that I can act that won't. And they're able to help the person get the most out of their traits, because they could be amazing. Right. But on the other hand, if you've got this high sensation seeking, right, which when it's functional, looks like you're always looking for new opportunities, right? Hey, we've got to grow. We've got to get into new markets. We got to do this. Versus the dysfunctional side, it could be just, straight up shiny object syndrome, right?
Right.
So that person is really helpful in sort of helping the founder CEO navigate these things and focus them and, keep things on a good footing.
Yeah, exactly. And that focus is so critical as an entrepreneur, because we do want to, we've typically got so many ideas and so many things that we want to solve, but man, it is tough sometimes to just be like, nope, can't do that. Can't do this thing over here until I figure out this thing that I've got right in front of me.
Right. Or, hey, look, the last 4 or 5 things that you said we were going to do, we're still in the middle of those and we just don't have the organizational capacity to pick up another thing, so almost, kind of prioritizing, right? So, okay, so which one of the last 3 or 4 things that we're doing should we stop doing in order to do this one? Or are we going to hire somebody and bring on another teammate? So just putting things like that in perspective, right? Because we tend to just keep looking forward. The image of, your team kind of cleaning up after the elephant, right? You kind of go through and you kind of make a mess and you keep moving forward, and somebody's got to clean it up and deal with it. And, it's important to be sensitive to that and respect them and kind of take their perspective when making plans,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So John, what has been the most difficult thing about being an entrepreneur? Maybe it's something we already touched on, but what do you think is the most difficult thing for you?
Well, I mean, in my industry, it's always been cash flow, right? So we provide special ed and therapy services for disabled children, so birth to 5 years old. So we deal with Medicaid, private insurance, health departments, school districts. So our accounts receivable is always just really, really long. And so when you've paid your people and now you're waiting for your customers to pay you, that restricts your cash flow and it really impedes what you can do. So as an entrepreneur with, thoughts and dreams and, just ideas of how to grow the company, it's hard in that kind of tight cash flow environment, right? The other thing that I always used to have trouble with, just personally, was separating it, right? I mean, I would get up in the morning, I'd hit it, I'd start work all day, come home, maybe spend a half hour to eat and catch up. But then I just felt like that there was more stuff I had to do and I had to go back and get it done and, just keep thinking. And one of the things that I learned not to do, probably a little bit too late, was not to email my key people in the evenings or on weekends. Not mainly because it just stresses them out, right? Even though I said, hey, you don't have to respond, when you get an email from your boss, that's kind of what you're thinking about at that point, right? And especially if you got ants in your pants and you're moving and you're proactive, they know that. And they're like, oh, he's going to want a response to this. He's not going to be able to relax. He's going to keep bugging me until he gets an answer. So it kind of disrupts their evening or their weekend. So just understanding that not everybody, conducts themselves the way I do, and realizing that, there's a difference there, and respecting that and just making sure that I'm doing what I need to do in order to get the most out of my team has been super helpful.
Yeah. That's a good tip. Yeah.
And I talked to my wife about that a lot. She's basically in the corporate world, right? And she'll receive something from her boss and she has to get it done. She's like, I got to do this. And they're like, dude, we're in the middle of vacation, doing something. And the boss even says, you don't have to respond to this, but it's just one of those things like, I have to do that. Right. Like,
yeah, of course.
It's pending. It's a question I'll probably forget. Let me go ahead and answer.
Yeah.
And it's just like, man, it like messes. It does kind of distract. It's that thing right there that has to be action, right? It's like, I gotta do it. I gotta push the button. You put a button in front of me. I gotta push it right now.
Yeah, right. So what I do now, like I'll type the email, right? Because I got to get it out of my system. Otherwise I'll forget it. But I'll just I'll send it later. I'll say, hey, send it tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Right. And that way they get it in the morning. I've sent it. It's off my chest and they get it, at a reasonable hour,
Yeah, exactly. I was going to ask you about that. If you schedule emails, I've never done that, but I thought about that to kind of do the exact same thing that you're talking about. Like you have to get that idea out, because if you don't get that out, and that's the main reason why you're contacting people at different hours. Like we're always thinking about things. It could be 11 o'clock at night. And, like I'll write something down in my, I'll write an email, no problem. And I don't expect people to get right back, but maybe it does put some extra pressure on them. So that's interesting. Just, scheduling it. I guess you got to be careful of not like scheduling too many emails for the same person at the same time. All of a sudden they get 10 emails at 8 a.m. on Monday morning, but there's a way to balance that.
Love it. So John, I mean, we've touched on a few things here, but as we kind of wind this episode down, are there a few anything that you can leave our listeners with? I mean, I know you've already gave us a couple strategies that we can implement, but is there one piece of advice or anything additional you could add to that? And if so, what would it be?
Yeah. So just acknowledge that there's two sides to the coin of all of these traits. So all of these traits that I listed, the propensity for risk, proactivity, urgency, sensation seeking, impulsivity, and so on, they can be super functional, highly functional, and give you a severe advantage over other people who don't have those. But on the other hand, they can be a big disadvantage as well and set you back way further than a normal person without those traits. So recognizing that each one of these traits has a positive side and a negative side, and kind of tuning into that and understanding and being self-aware enough to say, okay, this is my sense of urgency, lighting up right now. Is this being functional for me, or is it being dysfunctional for me? That's a really key thing. It's hard to do, but there are some things you can do. So a couple things we know help people manage their ADHD traits. One is daily movement. So whatever your kind of exercise is, whether it's swimming or biking or CrossFit or walking or yoga, whatever it is, super helpful because it gets your dopamine pathways going, right? And that's one of the things that we deal with. The other is some kind of meditation and gratitude practice. All of those three things certainly help to kind of focus you. And the other, of course, is just kind of writing everything down at night before you go to bed. So yeah, those are a couple of tips. The other thing, I've got a book out. It's called Lightning in a Bottle, How Entrepreneurs Can Harness Their ADHD to Win. Gets into some of the research I've been involved with, gets into some of my own stories, some of my clients' stories, and gives you some practical tips as well.
That's awesome.
We'll definitely have to check that out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we definitely encourage our listeners to check that out too. It looks awesome. Looking forward to reading it and seeing, kind of like trying to connect with it and see what I might be able to identify with, and it'll be pretty interesting.
Well, guys, I think that's a wrap for this episode. But from the both of us, John, we want to thank you for taking the time out of your day and joining us and adding value to what we're doing on our podcast.
My pleasure, guys. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure, John. Thank you all so much for listening to That Entrepreneur Life. To learn more about what John is working on, check out his book, Lightning in a Bottle. If you like what you heard today, please subscribe to our podcast, and don't forget to download our free ebook about the success mindset at thatentrepreneurlife.com.
Thanks for continuing to support what we do as entrepreneurs, and don't forget to join us next week for another episode of That Entrepreneur Life.
Thanks for listening to That Entrepreneur Life podcast. Be sure to visit thatentrepreneurlife.com to join the conversation, access our show notes, and discover our fantastic bonus content. Don't forget to join us next week for another episode as we continue to add value. Until next time.